Hey, this is Pamela, UFC Hall of Famer, and you're listening to It's Me Speaking to You with host Jeffrey Wilson.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of It's Me Speaking to You. I am, as always, your ever faithful host, Mr. Jeffrey Wilson, coming to you live and direct from the Gateway to the West, St. Louis, Missouri. And today, in an never exhausting effort to appreciate and support our sponsors, we have in studio tonight one of our brand new sponsors. She is the owner and proprietor of a very, from what I can tell, a very new company, the Concealed Carry Clothing Company. This is a company that specifically specializes in all-purpose, for what I can see, designed to give you comfort and ease as you try to walk around in a concealed carry fashion, especially in the state of Missouri, which now it's even open carry. And they even passed the Castle Law or whatever it was where you don't have to run, and which is going to get interesting. We'll see here in the next few months. Miss Pamela Johnson is joining us tonight. Miss Johnson, how are you this evening?
I'm doing well. It's wonderful to be here, Jeff.
Well, thank you so very much for taking the time. As a new sponsor, as I say, we're trying to branch out, trying to look into different kind of operations that support kind of what we support on the Conspiracy Farm, as well as It's Me Speaking to You. Looking at your company here, very, very cool. You have quite a lengthy line here, several different designs for men and women. What was the impetus, the catalyst for essentially creating an apparel company that specifies concealed carry people?
Well, first let me say it's wonderful to be a new sponsor. We always like to promote other patriots and support you guys, so your show's awesome and we love you.
Well, thank you very much.
As far as the line, yes, it's somewhat extensive. We have about 12 pieces at this point, and we specialize in concealed carry clothing for both men and women. So we want everyone to be able to carry their guns in comfort, and especially for women, it's much harder for us to find holster options. So we've come up with many different styles.
Well, and I see here as we peruse, as you are in studio in these Me Speaking to You studios this evening, ladies and gentlemen, we're perusing the old website here, and we're looking at, obviously, apparel for men and women. We're looking at T-shirt, undergarments. We're looking at underdress, underskirt garments, kind of short skirt, short shirts, if you will. I'm digging it, man. What was your, obviously, we've spoken off air. You have a background in apparel design. Sure. Tell us a little bit about your background, which kind of started you into this particular company.
Sure. So I've been in product development for over 10 years. So I have a lot of experience designing in other industries. And as I've had a concealed carry for almost 8 years, I was having trouble finding holster options that I liked. A lot of people, they like in the waistband carry, which is great, but for me, it never really worked out. I was doing purse carry for a long time, which isn't the most efficient option, in my opinion, at least for the primary gun. Maybe for a secondary, it's everyone's preference. But so since I had a background in product development for apparel and other industries, I decided to make some of my own holsters. So I tested out a lot of things, and, I found some things that worked and some that didn't. So I decided to start, a small business where I would see if anyone else was having similar issues, and it turned out that they do. And, there's a lot of new innovative fabrics that are out now that are great for holsters, as well as we have a patent-pending retention technology that we also use that's exclusive to the C4.com.
Very cool. Very cool. Guys, as I peruse through here, I mean, you have, again, apparel for men and women, upper apparel, lower apparel. I'm digging the pants here, the kind of like skin tight, kind of tights, if you will. It looks very, for lack of a better term, very ergonomical, very functional. Looks very, like, if you really need to go for these things, it looks like something that's very, like, kind of quick to grab.
Right. We wanted to make it as easy as possible. So you don't, no one wants to really overthink their wardrobe every morning, especially for women. It's a little more complicated. Our uniform is a little more diverse than men. As far as the men's options,
that is sexism there, and I will not stand for it here on This Me Speaking. I joke.
Of course not.
I joke.
But yes, most of the men's options are base layers. So you would wear these compression garments underneath your normal shirt, say if you go to work or something. We do also have a breakaway collared shirt that men can wear that features a magnet closure. So you could open it very easily and then access the firearm underneath. And so we do have some systems that work together with a base layer and then a shirt that goes over it. For women, it's similar. We carry some shorts with a thigh holster, which we're actually the first company to produce one like this. So you wear your firearm in the shorts, and then you would wear a skirt or dress over it. And it provides for very easy single-handed draw. And it's actually quite comfortable, and it stays, because of the compression, it stays very close to the body and doesn't move around. Also, we have retention technology in there as well, as I mentioned. But yeah, then we have leggings too. The leggings we carry right now are mostly for, I would say, hiking. We have a lot of garments that could be used for exercise as well. So if you're, running at night especially, it's really important to make sure that you're safe. So there's actually several options for women who are runners in the evening, or running alone, or in a park where no one else is, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm seeing, like, with obviously the men and the women, it's not just concealed carry for your firearm. You have multiple compartments, multi-pocketed compartments for whatever it is, your phone, an extra clip. And like I said, it's very utilitarian, and like, obviously nobody leaves home with just, we have so many things on us when we leave. And this is one of those things that if you kind of want to carry it and not have to be, held down in your pockets or whatever, these are very, very tight, very clean. Like, again, very utilitarian garments, man. I'm so glad to have you guys signed up.
They're very minimal. We're trying to do a minimalist thing where it's as least bulky as possible. So even for people that don't carry firearms, we've sold these to people who travel a lot because they're awesome to take overseas, to keep your personal IDs, very close to your body so that you have less attempts at possibly being mugged.
Kind of like the old school money belts or whatever they used to have. Yeah, up or under your, yeah.
And I personally wear these to Six Flags. Obviously, you can't bring a firearm inside there, but I keep them on during roller coasters and whatnot. I just keep my money and my personal ID on me. So it works in a lot of ways,
And this was not a shameless plug for Six Flags, obviously, but
no, of course not.
I mean, and that's absolutely true. I mean, it's very functional. I mean, I've seen me personally, we and Pat, just as looking as people and companies that we want as our sponsors, we definitely have seen other companies not necessarily doing what you're doing. We've seen a couple that are doing what you're doing that just aren't quite on spec as far as ergonomically and as utilitarian, not quite as functional. But like I said, when you think about kind of your company, you're breaching into kind of a verging market here. Obviously, there's so much conversation when Obama was in office about, not to get too political, about gun seizures, et cetera, et cetera. Where do you see your company? Obviously, there's a huge market for it. When gun sales are exploding over the last several years, even withstanding Obama, but I'm sure that had something to do with it. But what are your thoughts on your company, the future of your company?
Sure. So there is a lot of new shooters getting into concealed carry, which is awesome. We want as many people that are trained, to carry concealed. And so we keep them in mind as well. And that's part of the reason that we want to make these holsters as comfortable and flexible as possible. So that being said, yes, it's possibly an issue, kind of hinging on the election, how it goes. It is possible that, maybe our rights may be infringed upon. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But, it's like Americans, if they're told they can't do something, they usually flock towards it. So I really don't think that people are going to allow anything to really infringe on their Second Amendment rights. More people are becoming more aware of the issue, I think.
Yeah, I mean, not to get too political, but I mean, as a new sponsor, you're going to be around for a while, so you're going to have to get lumped in with the rest of us here if you're going to want to.
Sure.
Yeah, you kind of know what you're getting in bed with here when you're jumping in with a conspiracy farm here, but no, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's just there's been that conversation about, Obama's going to seize guns, et cetera, but it's really not even about that. And, if we want to have a very meticulous and specific conversation about the Second Amendment, what that means about a well-regulated militia, et cetera, but, and I'm not saying you're saying this, and I've said this on our show and my show, no one's talking about physical war here, but tyranny, a provision in the Second Amendment is to make sure we're armed for a tyrannical government. And
Sure.
we can have that conversation as to whether that the government is tyrannical or not. But in my opinion, my personal opinion, and Pamela Johnson's does not exactly sign on to the thoughts of Jeff Wilson, but, we're looking at some serious issues here as it relates to the Second Amendment and other different rights taken away. Again, not to say we're going to get physical with the government, but one of the provisions of the Second Amendment is for us to be able to arm ourselves against a tyrannical government. And as we had a conversation with former Baltimore police officer Michael Wood, we had this discussion, but tyranny didn't go away at the end of the Revolutionary War, and we have to have that larger conversation of when is a government really tyrannical? But again, not to sign you up to too much of this madness as we go down the rabbit hole in the conspiracy farm. But what are your thoughts on the larger picture of?
I think if people are being honest with themselves and they've taken a look at the Second Amendment, they'll realize that probably one of, if not the main reason for everyone to be armed is in case the government were to infringe on the rights of the people. And that's why it's the Second Amendment. After the First, it's very important, of course. So we need to arm ourselves against anyone who may be infringing on our rights, whether that be, the government, terrorists, a mugger, home invasion, anything like that.
Absolutely.
So we do have to look out for ourselves and our families. And one of the best ways to protect yourself in real time is to have a weapon on you as much as possible. And, of course, to be trained with it,
Exactly. Well, I was just going to say, yeah, there has to be some level of prudence as far as, you can't just walk out there with, because these are deadly weapons, and they really need to be respected as such. Even though in the state of Missouri there is no longer a certification that is required to carry a weapon, etc. I do believe, we do need to get trained with these things, because it's just like, you're walking around. It's almost like I don't know. They're weapons that can kill people. So I think there's definitely some level of training that needs to take place. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. Obviously, on the Conspiracy Farm, a huge theme over the last several weeks, and not, whatever. We don't want to pin down our sponsors as far as their political affiliations. But if they're rolling with the Conspiracy Farm, then we have to kind of think that they're at least somewhat on board. But what are your thoughts on this thing we call the 2016 presidential race, the debates? Like I said, I don't know how far your information goes back on either of these candidates, but what are your thoughts on this? It's madness. It seems like it's madness day to day, WikiLeaks, etc. What are your thoughts on all this?
It is madness. I think in large part it's an insult to most of our intelligence. I think that, it's possibly a false choice. I think we should have more options than probably the two candidates that we have. Obviously, since I'm pro Second Amendment, I'm, leaning towards the candidate that will not try to infringe upon the Second Amendment, which, is just common sense. However, it is quite a spectacle that we've been witnessing, and we're, rolling into the end here. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and like we had a show the other day, and it's not like I said, I don't have any particular axe to grind, but the establishment, from what I've seen of them and what I've known of them, will not go down. And if they're going to go down, they're going to go down swinging. And I just don't see them, like I said, through the media and all these other apparatus. I think they're gonna put their girl in. I think we're gonna have 4 years of Hillary, in my humble opinion. That's not to say I want it, but I think that's what's going to go down.
That's what it's looking like to me. I mean, she's clearly being ushered in my opinion. As far as the mainstream media goes, it seems like they're definitely in her corner. So, and they hold a lot of weight, even though they're losing a lot of viewers and whatnot. They've still got a hold of a lot of the masses' minds, and hopefully people will start to think for themselves as we roll into the end here. But I don't know. I've been seeing the same train roll on for a long time, so it's probably not going to deviate.
There's nothing new under the sun, as they say, Miss Johnson. So,
That's true.
I mean, if we do, you've heard all of this. If Trump wins, I'm going to flee to such and such. What do you think? What do you think happens? And I don't prognosticate for us, if you will. Hillary wins. What happens? Trump wins. What I mean, obviously, you're never going to please everybody, but what do you see happening? Do you think it's as dire as they say if either of these candidates win?
Well, I am concerned about the tensions between Russia. It seems like if Hillary gets in, we may be having rising tensions, which is really not good for either country or the entire world. I mean, these two superpowers. I mean, we don't need to mess with each other again, but they're escalating things to the point where the mainstream media is claiming that we're beyond where we were in the Cold War. I mean, it's quite a statement, And Hillary's been, pretty decisive in her opposition towards Putin, whereas, Trump hopefully would be able to work something out. So that's an issue for me. I don't want to see that escalated in any way. The U.S. doesn't need any more conflicts.
Yeah, we're definitely spread quite thin. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where your thoughts are on this, but it's definitely has come to a very much of an apex, a point, if you will, a climax in a different way. It's like a Cold War 2.0, if you will.
Right.
But in this time, it's like Putin is, even though, in my opinion, ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to my show, we've had this conversation, they're all gangsters. But this particular gangster, Putin, it seems like he's starting to give more inside baseball on things that we've talked about, and I'm not sure if you're hip with it or not. Our government, other governments funding ISIS, etc. Because Putin is getting the blame for being a part of Assad, but in fact, what's going on over there in Syria is Assad, Putin, they're just protecting the people against this state-ran proxy force, if you will, called ISIS at this point in time. Are you familiar with that? What are your thoughts on any of that?
I have heard
Putin giving the inside baseball.
Right. Yes, I do follow the foreign media, which tends to report much more than our media does. It's not as filtered. Yes, Putin and some of his staff have been coming out and saying some pretty amazing things. I think Americans would maybe agree. Certainly if we had seen it on U.S. news.
Which we don't, unfortunately.
Right, and it seems like we're getting a skewed version of what's really happening over there. So it's pretty alarming, and it's hard to know what's going on because it's convoluted. But certainly Americans are being led astray by their, supposed media outlets.
It sounds like we have a conspiracy farm listener here. You must have been listening to the show, ladies and gentlemen. No, that's a very apt analysis, Ms. Johnson, because I absolutely agree. And I just find it interesting because, Putin, I just have never seen the gangsters. Yeah, of course, the gangsters talk amongst each other, but I've just never seen them speak so outwardly to the rest of the world, to the media about like, hey, here's what's really going on the inside. The foreign minister in Russia, Lavrov, he laments the same thing. That, and even WikiLeaks, the recent, some of their stuff came out that United States, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Israel, they're all supporting this proxy war known as ISIS. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to ramble, but I mean, this is, it's big news, man. It's big news.
Certainly the Assange situation is a little alarming. I mean, what happened there? Do we even know where he is now?
That was so interesting. Last week, there was this, like, he dropped all that information, and then within, like, a 48-hour period, there was, like, I don't know about this Twitter shit about whatever, but this dead man switch, and he started releasing all this information, which made people think he hit that he was dead.
There were some codes released on Twitter, right?
And then there was reports that he was taken out by British special intelligence with a hood over his head. It just seemed, after a while, it seemed very apparent that there was just a very deliberate kind of smoke cloud of information put out.
Sure.
And then Ecuador supposedly wind up saying we cut his We cut his internet feed because the day before John Kerry was like, if you don't do something or whatever, there's going to be dire consequences, etc. But apparently Ecuador cut that internet feed. But I mean, I don't know.
Oh, okay, so it was Ecuador that cut the feed. I hadn't followed up on it in a few days, but certainly, yeah, John Kerry was making some threats, and I think people should start asking questions like, why are our public officials threatening this man for, possibly releasing what he knows? I mean, don't Americans want to know what he knows?
But clearly not. Clearly not. I mean, this is a part of what we, on the conspiracy farm, even on me speaking to you, we rack our brain. Nobody cares. I've spoken at length about the depths of the Clintons' craziness and criminality, and WikiLeaks has only echoed it and reaffirmed it. It's just nobody cares. They would rather be pissed off at the jerk they don't know because their feelings are hurt than the criminal that we all know, which is just confounding to me. It's weird. It's weird to me. I'm sorry. Like I said, you're going to start rolling down the rabbit hole with us here at the Conspiracy Farm, but it just confounds our brain as we speak of constantly the lack of accountability. But no,
certainly it's alarming. People don't get a well-rounded amount of information, though. Like I said, they usually have like one media source and they sort of just take it as face value, whereas probably we need to start questioning more about what's going on. Also, the Clintons have a long history, and a lot of that's public, and you can look into that. A lot of these allegations, they've been around since the 90s at least.
All right, see, we clearly have a listener of the Conspiracy Farm. She clearly has been listening. It goes back to the 70s and 80s, ladies and gentlemen. You're absolutely right. And even if you don't even talk about that, what's going on today, like from what I hear people say, Ms. Johnson, I'm sorry, I'm not going to keep you too much longer, but what I hear people say is like the FBI exonerated her, Congress exonerated her for Benghazi and, the email thing. But it's like, Congress investigated tobacco and said it was okay. Congress investigated sugar and said it was okay. The Warren Commission, headed up by the freaking, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, said, again, you're tumbling down the rabbit hole with me, but that Lee Harvey Oswald did it. But these, when they investigate themselves, I just find it dubious. I find their conclusions dubious. I know this is why I host a show called The Conspiracy Farm, but it's like, how can we take these conclusions so serious? The Bill Clinton goes on the Attorney General's plane days before there is a conclusion or resolution to Hillary's email stuff. Like it's straight gangsterism.
It certainly seems that way, and they're pretty lax on the Clintons. It seems like they can kind of just do what they want, I guess. I mean, the email scandal is pretty absurd. If anyone else had been doing that, I mean, they would be in prison at this point.
I was just gonna say that's very different. It's so very frustrating, yeah. And she's not only not in prison, she's about to be president.
It appears that way, yeah. And, Bill will be back in the White House. It'll be amazing.
Which is even more absurd. But since we have a lady in the studio, we are not going to go down that rabbit hole as to why we don't want that to happen. Because this guy was just doing wrong on top of wrong in the Oval Office. Is there anything else you want to kind of touch on, Ms. Johnson? We're going to obviously plug your website here in just a moment. Anything you want to touch on before we head out?
Well, it's been fun, and I hope I can come back and talk more after the election, after we see which way that swings.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you, though, and I hope that people will check out thec4.com, take a look at our products, and email us with any questions or concerns, or possibly any suggestions.
Where would they email? Is that all that contact information is on the website?
Sure, it's on the website, but it's also info@thec4.com.
Very cool. Well, I mean, this has been a very interesting conversation. Of course, we tumble down the rabbit hole. We can always sit for hours and hours, but I'm not going to keep you. I know you have many things to do. This has been the proprietor, the owner of thec4.com, stepping in and joining us tonight for a brief conversation about her line of clothing at thec4.com, the concealed carry clothing company. I thank you so much for taking the time, Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Jeff, and you have a good night.
You as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been It's Me Speaking to You, speaking with Miss Pamela Johnson from the Concealed Carry Clothing Company, thec4.com. Everyone, peace and all that love. We will speak very soon. Take care, everybody.